Hey everyone, I'm Anya Esma, and today we are going to talk about how to tell new people that you are into tarot. So what I mean by new people is a lot of things. It can be complete strangers, it can be people you met a few weeks ago, it can be your family, anyone that you want to tell that you are into tarot basically, and that you like reading tarot for yourself, for others, whether it's you doing it professionally or you just starting out your journey. The point of this video is you want to tell someone, anyone about it. And I want to give you some pointers based on having told people in the past, based on reactions I have gotten, based on, contexts that I've been in where I've had to disclose it or wanted to disclose it or whatever, so that you are a little bit more equipped as you tell people about it. It can also apply to you if you are not completely in the tarot closet, but you have already told some people, but you want to tell more people, but maybe you've told all your close friends, but you never told your family, or you never told people at work, and now you kind of want to. So no matter what the situation is that you're in, I will try to make the advice sort of applicable to all of that. And one note, this isn't necessarily about teaching someone tarot or telling someone that they should get into tarot, or even assuming that someone is interested in it. And this is what I want to say, because I have, I think, 8 points, 8 pieces of advice. Watch all of them. I think they make the most sense when you watch them together. I put timestamps below as well. But also be discerning of which advice fits which situation and which audience. Why did I struggle with that word? Which advice fits which audience, because obviously one piece of advice might apply if you tell your family, but not if you tell a friend, etc., etc. You're all smart, I know you, so you will be able to discern that. Because at the end of the day, if you tell your Christian mother, it's a very different thing than if you tell your atheist friend, or you tell a complete stranger at a party that you're into tarot. So depending on the context and the situation, just take whatever advice fits you and have fun with it. So let's jump into my 8 points. The first point I want to make, if you are introducing yourself as someone who does tarot to someone, try to avoid the mistake that I always did, where I tell them what tarot is to me first, because I want to avoid that they have too many thoughts. That's not a good approach. Usually I used to start with, oh, tarot to me, I would say something like, I'm into tarot, but tarot to me is just psychological and it's about the subconscious, and then like blah, blah, blah. I said 2-3 sentences that are probably not very, they don't make sense to the person probably. So the important thing here is to understand, this is the first piece of advice, understand what the concept of tarot entails to the other person. So ask them, like, what do you know about it? What do you think about it? You can tell them, hey, I do tarot readings occasionally. And then you will already kind of see the reaction, and you can first understand what it means for them. Because once you understand what it means for someone, you can much more easily have a conversation about it. If they literally think it's the tool of the devil, it's going to be a different conversation than if they say like, yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't know anything. Or if they say they've literally never heard of it, which has never happened to me. I think everyone has heard of card reading, as at least, not necessarily tarot. So just ask them what they know, basically. Get on their level and listen to them, because people love being listened to anyways, and you are giving that to them so that they give it to you, and you get that knowledge of, okay, this person is at that level, they have this knowledge, and you can grab something from that more easily and have a conversation more easily than if you start off the conversation with, yeah, hey, I'm into tarot. It's all about psychology. It's about the subconscious mind. It's about self-development. It's about spirituality, and it helped me through a really tough phase of my life. And it's kind of overwhelming to start off with that. So listen first and understand what the other person knows already. And this also gives you something to agree or disagree with, which leads to the second point very nicely. Because the second point of when you want to introduce yourself as someone who does tarot and want to tell someone is that you should remember that there is no right way to view tarot. I know that this in itself is an opinion. Obviously, there are people who say there is a right way to see tarot, there is a right way to use tarot. I am not of that opinion, and I don't think it's a very helpful opinion to have if you want to have a conversation with someone. So remember that as you are talking to the person, you're basically just explaining your view. And that is usually what I lead with as well. I let people know, like, hey, this is my concept of tarot. This is how I view it. And if they see it purely as a fortune-telling tool or only ever heard of it as a fortune-telling tool, I can be like, okay, my view on it is different. The way I use it is different. And you have something to latch onto, you know? But you shouldn't say something like, no, it's not a fortune-telling tool. No, it's not a tool of the devil. No, it's not whatever statement about tarot you don't agree with, and state it as a fact. Just say like, yeah, some people use it like that. I use it differently. And maybe to someone else, fortune telling is super important and you should respect that, you know? It's like the main purpose, foretelling times, foretelling pregnancies, foretelling marriages maybe. This is mainly how they use tarot, and you can't be like, hey, no, that's not how to use it. It's not how you use it, it's how they use it. So always be clear about that. When you tell a complete newbie, tell them this is your view and explain that while for you it's maybe a tool for reflection or a psychological tool, for someone else it may very well be something they use in witchcraft or something that they foretell the future with. And the second thing with this is also, as you are kind of framing this as your subjective view on tarot, also avoid becoming preachy, because nobody wants someone to be preachy and be like, yeah, you should really get into tarot and oh, it's so great, unless you feel like the person is open to that. But if they are not, you kind of have to read your audience, you know? Don't just be like, yeah, it's the best tool ever. If you do self-reflection without tarot, then you're not doing it right, or something like that. Avoid like extreme statements, obviously. And explain it slowly and explain what it means to you and that it's your opinion and that you are not forcing something on the other person. So piece of advice number 3, if you want to explain tarot to someone new, is that before you get into any of this, you should know what tarot means for yourself. So in point 2, I said, stick to your own opinion. If you don't know that opinion and you don't know what your concept of tarot is, that's not ideal. Unless you're like literally talking to a friend, trying to figure out what it means for you and stuff, you know. I'm not saying don't have these conversations. I'm saying if you tell a stranger or if you tell your mother who is Christian and has great doubts about tarot, you should have some solid ground and be able to answer some questions of what it means for you so that the conversation can go well. Now, a great book for this is Liz Worth's book, The Power of Tarot. I did a review on that book as well. I will link that down below. And it's just really good at helping you figure out what your beliefs about tarot are. And even as a seasoned reader or someone who knows a lot about tarot and has a lot of opinions, so to say, the book was really interesting to read because there were questions that you can keep asking yourself. Even after working with tarot for 5 years, you can ask yourself, what do I actually believe in? What is the power that is behind this? Is there a power behind this? Because for me personally, that changed as well from when I started versus where I am now. I have different beliefs about it and different concepts in my mind about it, and being aware of those, even if you don't externalize all of that and tell everyone what you believe in, it's still good to know as a basis. So for example, yeah, what do you believe are the energies involved in this? How did you come to believe that? Did you always believe it, or did you just start? Do you believe it can foretell the future? Do you believe it cannot? Do you believe in determinism? Do you think our future is written out? Or do you believe that it's just one path or one view that tarot gives us, one glimpse of what could happen if things fall into place in a certain way? So all of these questions that people might ask, kind of get clear on them. You can't be clear on all of them, and this is like a little bonus piece of advice. If you don't want to talk about something or you don't know the answer to it, just say you don't know, or just say no. Because personally, I have to say, if someone asks me a question about it and I don't know the answer, I used to get almost defensive in a way where I'm like, oh, well, I don't know the answer, but I somehow have to cover that up. And it's okay, you know, you can just say like, I haven't thought about it, or I honestly don't know. It hasn't been part of my framework. It hasn't been part of how I practice, but I will think about it and I can get back to you if you want to. Or you just say you don't want to talk about it, because there are obviously parts of your spiritual practice or your personal development practice that you don't want to disclose to others, and that is absolutely fine. Then just say like, it's not something I want to talk about. Like, if someone asks you, I don't know, you had a really rough breakup or something, and someone is like, oh, so did you use tarot to get over that breakup? What did tarot tell you about the other person? Or something like that, you know? You can just say like, I don't want to talk about it. So keep that in mind, keep your boundaries in mind, but at least know yourself the answer to a lot of the basic questions of what you believe in regarding tarot. Now, the fourth piece of advice I have is that if you know something about the person and they are important to you and you obviously want them to take it well that you are reading tarot, then try to connect tarot or your experience with something that they may have experienced. So I'm not talking about strangers at parties in this case, because at least for me, I don't know about you, but if you tell a stranger that you're into tarot, their opinion doesn't matter that much. If they make dumb jokes, like whatever. But if you tell your mother or someone or your father who is religious and has doubts, then obviously their opinion matters in the sense that you don't want them to worry about you. If someone is religious or spiritual, think about how you can connect the experiences you've had with tarot and open up about that and say like, hey, I know that when you go to church, you have this feeling of connecting to divinity. Tarot does that for me. It feels like I connect to myself, I connect to God, divinity, goddess, whatever you want to call it, and sort of boil it down to the smallest common denominator, I suppose. If you know something about the person and you're able to do that, that's a good idea. And I know one concern, one disclaimer, one concern I've had with a lot of the advice I give, it is super tuned towards the audience. And I understand that it might sound like we're trying to people please here, like we're trying to let people down easy, that we're into tarot and we want them to like us and we want them to understand tarot, etc. But for me, I think it's more a matter of being considerate and being a good conversationalist, to not overwhelm people and to kind of be in tune with your audience and not just like slap a bunch of your tarot opinions on them, even though they might not care or they might find it disturbing or whatever may be the case. So I don't want these pieces of advice to come across as people pleasing, in the sense that you are being manipulative of like thinking about how can I make this person like tarot or something. It's not about that. But in every conversation I have, I think about, you know, how can I connect my experience and their experience? How can you have a conversation on the same level without me like preaching and being like, yeah, tarot is this great spiritual tool and you little peasant can't even understand it, you know? That's not a nice conversation. So I'm coming from that point. I just want to have a good conversation about it and not have like different levels or roles of conversational partners coming up. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's not about people pleasing or manipulating people into liking it. It's just about having a conversation that makes sense from the standpoint of this is me and this is my audience. So advice number 5 only really applies if the person is super interested. So what I mean by this is if you can tell they have an interest in this, if you can tell like, hey, they want to hear more about it, you can consider telling your story, your progress with tarot. And what I mean by that is how did it evolve? How did you get into it? Why did you get into it? And how did your opinions change from when you started to where you are now? What do you use it for? So that the person can see how it evolved. Because if you go to someone and say, hey, I'm into tarot and I use it to commune with goddesses, or I use it to communicate with the Holy Mother Mary or something, people might look at you and be like, okay. But if you start easy and tell them like, yeah, I'm into tarot, it's a tool for self-development, and then you slowly develop the story of, hey, I was in a tough period of my time, whatever your tarot story is, or I've known it all my life and I connected more deeply to it in 2000 whatever, then you can take them by the hand and kind of explain stuff rather than being like, yep, I talk to goddesses through tarot, because that might be completely outside of the framework for some people and completely outside of what they would think a normal person would do. So to make it easier for them to understand your progress, then just tell them about the progress, tell them the story. Obviously, this is if they are interested. If you notice there's no interest, then don't start telling your whole tarot life story. But I think this is obvious. Number 6, this is kind of like the boundary advice. If you know that you will have to have a conversation, let's say you are meeting someone new, you are going to a party, you know you will want to tell the person about it, or you know that you want to tell your sister, your brother, whoever about it this weekend. To prepare for the conversation, you should know how much you want to share. You should have some boundaries of the spiritual experiences that you are willing to share, because a lot of the stuff that you can experience with tarot is like super raw and you make yourself vulnerable when you talk about it. You might want to do that with the sister who's the closest person in your life. You might not want to do that with your aunt who is more removed from you emotionally and physically or whatever, mentally removed from you. So think about that. Think about how much you are willing to share and what experiences are, how you can kind of tone down your experiences to a palatable level for the respective person so that they can understand your perspective on it and they can follow you and not think that you are completely bonkers. As I said, this only applies if you care what the person thinks. If you literally don't care, like the other day I told a colleague about tarot and I literally didn't care. He made some joke about it and I'm like, whatever, like I don't care. But if it's someone who's close to you, you probably care. And in that case, think about what you're willing to share, what is too vulnerable, what is too much, how you can make it palatable for them, basically. Advice number 7, however, is at the end of the day, don't care too much about other people's opinions. You know what tarot means to you. You know why you are using the tool. You know why you want to share about using this tool, and you know why you want to keep doing it. So if you want to share that, and if you want to start off with, hey, yes, I use tarot as a ritual for manifestation or in my rituals for manifestation or something like that, do it. It's fine. If that is your idea or your wish of authenticity, then go ahead and do that. Especially if you don't care too much about people's opinions. I know that piece of advice sounds kind of like, sure, you can throw gas on the fire. You might not want to, but that's not how I mean it. I literally mean it like that. If you don't care, don't care. Just say what you want to say, be authentic. But for me personally, I think it makes more sense to try and know your audience and slowly introduce whatever your approach to tarot is. Now, advice number 8 is actually about if the person is interested in tarot to the point that they ask like, hey, how can I get into this? Obviously, you can provide resources to them. Maybe you have your deck with you. It has happened to me that people are like, hey, can you teach me something right now? Or like, can you show me something right now? And for me, the best approach to it was always to show people that there is a system behind it. It's not just 78 random cards. It's like a philosophical and psychological concept behind it. And explaining to people that tarot has an order, that there is the system of the 4 elements tied to the cards, there's the system of numerology tied to the cards, or the system of like metaphors and symbols that repeat, or the narrative of the Fool's journey, like the Fool going through the major arcana as a narrative. It's not just random cards. And once you help someone understand that, I think that's a huge, great starting point for them to start to understand where they could start learning tarot or start understanding more about it. Because maybe they have worked with elements before. Maybe they know that they are a water sign, and then they can say like, oh, hey, so the cups kind of relate to me. It gives you a starting point. Or maybe they're really into storytelling and they're like, hey, this Fool's Journey thing sounds really cool. Or maybe they like numbers and then the numerology thing works for them. Or maybe, like me, they have studied literature and they really go off on metaphors and symbols and understand the world through that. So depending on that, you can help people find an access point, basically. Or maybe they are into psychology, then it's easy to find an access point, definitely. Because it's easier for people to understand the power of tarot once they understand how it relates to their life, or how it reflects very general and ultimate truths of life, like explaining, hey, this is the tower. If you don't give room to change in your life, you're going to get forced to change. That's what the tower is about. People are going to get that. It makes sense. It's a psychological, philosophical thing that just fits, So that is a good starting point if you want to help people understand the power of tarot. That's actually funny that I just said the title of Liz's book again, The Power of Tarot, without meaning to. Yeah, so those are my 8 pieces of advice. I would also say, as a last piece of advice, not really the 9th one, but kind of a bonus one, is don't get defensive. Don't get defensive. If people want to make dumb jokes about it, it's fine. Let them, don't care too much about it. I just remember that it's my thing, and if they don't like it, they don't have to like it. I have probably made dumb jokes, dumb, uneducated jokes about topics that I knew nothing about or had prejudices about, and that's what they're doing. They have no education about tarot, they have no understanding of it, and then there are like some low-hanging fruits, like the kinds of jokes you've heard a million times as someone who's into tarot and tells people regularly. And that's fine. Like, whatever. It's like having tattoos and someone asks you, did it hurt? What does it mean? You kind of get used to it. So don't worry too much about that. Don't get defensive. Don't be like, like, no, I'm not scamming people. I mean, if they literally think you're scamming people out of their money, you might want to say, I'm not doing that. But don't let it touch you. You know what I mean? Don't let it touch you. If they're like, haha, this is like what scammers do on TV, or they say something like, oh, you're like manipulating people into cleaning your house. I've heard that one, like, haha, you're just using the cards and telling them to clean your house. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, it's not a bad joke, but it's also not particularly funny. I can appreciate a joke if it's good. But I know that some people can't, and some people it really like hurts them or hits them. And I'm just saying, don't let it touch you too much. It's your thing. Nobody can ruin it for you if you don't let them. So don't get defensive. Okay, that was the bonus piece of advice. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know your experiences with telling people about tarot and you being into tarot, or even witchcraft. It kind of fits into that too, in the comments, even though I think witchcraft is a whole other can of worms. And yeah, just let me know what's up. How did it go? You can also find me on Instagram if you want to follow me more, or subscribe to this channel, or just do both, which would be great. Like this video, share this video if you feel like it. And thank you so, so much for watching. I will see you very, very soon.